everybody, it's Christine here with the Co-Living Code, another fun episode this week. We have somebody from Canada joining us. We have David Bonk. He is actually now launching his first, he has background with property development, but he is now actually joining the co-living game with their first commercial development geared towards older adults, which are seniors. In the co-living market. And everybody asks me my thoughts on that market. We've yet to have anybody on this show yet that's talked about senior housing for co-living. So I'm thrilled. He'd posted somewhere in a message board and I'd reached out. I'm like, David, I have to get you on my show. I just love what you're getting ready to do. And so I will definitely dig into Homefree Living, what it's about, why you decided to get started in there, and some of your background. So let's start there, actually, David. Let's tell the viewers and listeners about your background.
Sure. Thank you so much, Christine, for having me on your show, and looking forward to our chat. And so you want to start with some of my background, was it?
Please.
Sure.
And or if you want to talk about, so sorry, I'll interrupt you for one split second. David's so funny. He's like, are we allowed to cuss on this? And I'm like, yeah, you can say whatever you want. It's like, you want to drop some F-bombs, go for it. He goes, well, sometimes I get passionate. I might drop an F-bomb. I'm like, okay, hey, go for it. It's a co-living code. It doesn't need to be censored.
Just didn't want to, if in the event that I get in the flow and it happens, I didn't want to have to internally beat myself up for not censoring myself. So thanks for the permission to just be free in my communication. Yeah.
Yes, go for it.
So background is for about 20 years, I've been in construction, real estate, property management, and I've had a few properties in Alberta that were larger luxury multi-roomed properties that at one point I was renting out to the luxury market, so CEOs and that kind of thing. And that is economically seasonal sort of a business. So what ended up happening with those properties is two of them, actually, I had different groups approach me who wanted to rent them, and it ended up being people who were doing co-living. And it sort of opened my eyes to this way of living, and the odd time when I'd have to go over to the property to help them with something or, visit, I'd see, messages on their fridge like meditation night, Wednesday, Mexican night, Monday. I thought, oh, this is neat. And, I remember at one point going back to my own, house that I lived in alone with, so much space, and I increasingly felt house guilt myself. And there were times where I thought, well, I sort of just want to move into a room with these guys because that looks like fun. And so that was my background in co-living has really just been in providing the property and allowing these communities to live there. And, I got a little bit more rent, I suppose, than the market would bear had I rented it to a more traditional type of situation. So they were always good experiences. I felt really good about the use of the properties and just having a lower economic, ecological footprint, I should say, by having so many people really using this house. I felt good about that. And sort of as, I went through personal changes and sort of moved away from materialism and went through my own midlife crisis, or whatever let's call it that for now. I really wanted to change my business and get out of that luxury market and go more towards the social side of things. And I guess I should put in that along the way with my real estate business, I'd also founded a charitable organization that we did renovations for homeowners who have a mobility challenge and an economic need. So people who are in a wheelchair, and they, it was just sort of my give back project. Then that ended up growing, and we ended up doing, I think in 1 year we did about 20 renovations, totally donated renovations, volunteer run organizations. So I sort of had these two projects that I was working on. One was for profit and one was nonprofit, and I ended up spending a lot more time on my nonprofit because it was just a lot more fulfilling. And so I came to a point within the last few years where I'd sort of reached a ceiling, I guess, of a vision that I'd created in the past. And these projects, I realized I just can't keep up with this demand for the senior living, and eyes got open to the realities of our aging population, and also just as I mentioned on the other side, the whole having a couple cars in a garage and living in a big house alone and sort of serving that market. Neither of them were really working, so I wanted to create one project, a social enterprise type of project, and so I set out to do co-living for older adults, and so that's currently where I'm at with the project I'm working on.
I love that. So you had a couple great points there. And it's so funny. We were at this amazing dinner last night and we were talking about co-living. Of course, the topic always usually comes up. And, here in the States, you heard the term McMansions. So they build all these monster huge houses, and it's like, maybe two people are living in them, maybe family of four, but it's this massive house with extra bedrooms and extra living rooms that you're never allowed to go in. And it's just the same thing, and I got into minimalism like 3 years ago. And I had the big house with the cars in the garage, same thing, like this huge house and wasted space. And so I love that you had that similar experience where it's like this house could be much better used in a different way, in a different manner. And what's funny is in the States, a lot of these co-living concepts, ours included, we're actually in like, what would be considered, which was probably like a McMansion, like 10, 20 years ago in the early 2000s, where it's two people were living here. And now we have 6 people fully using the space. We co-work out of it. So you're right. It's just a smaller footprint. And so I agree. And I think a lot of people getting into the space, they care about that, right? So how do we share space? How do we, with the sharing economy, how do we share, maybe still have those 3 cars in the garage, but 6 people are sharing those 3 cars? What does that look like? So yeah, I'm really glad you touched on that. So now leading in, and then last question, how long ago, like you said, you would go over there and you'd see that they were doing events and they were living, like created this co-living intentional community. How long ago was that?
Now let's see. I guess these guys were probably doing co-living before it was becoming an Olympic event. So honestly, probably 8-9 years ago.
Whoa!
That's where it started. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
even know if they called it co-living then.
No.
They were just people sharing a house, and they'd bring different roommates in, and I gave them the freedom to do that.
No, and so much credit to you, Dave, because I tell this story over and over and over. Just even our Los Angeles home was 40 different homeowners, landlords, property managers. 40 said no to me. The 41st finally was this amazing guy who was like, I love the concept, let's do it. Because again, you have to have somebody that understands the model, that's open to it. Having different people coming through, subleasing, I was very upfront with all of that. So a lot of credit goes to you for being an understanding property owner on that sense and letting them do that. So now it sounds like, again, you see the need for the aging population, which is so true. They don't want to be in these like actual facilities or, put away, off, like nobody wants to do that. Right. Why not live together under one roof, support each other? What kind of, how are you going to set it up and what kind of amenities are you going to provide?
So we need to have accessible properties. So it's got to be, barrier free to a certain extent. Stairs are the reason older adults end up moving out of the home that they live in currently. Their private home is one of probably 4 things, or a combination of all of them. The stairs are an issue. So getting in and around the house, that's huge for people. And the charitable organization I ran in the past, I saw the impact that just a couple stairs can have. So there's little old lady sort of thing that's sleeping their lazy boy on their main floor in their living room because they can't get upstairs in their own house. And one lady was living like that for like 6 years. So there's accessibility is a big thing. So all my properties, including this first one, will be. But real estate investment tip, by the way, buy bungalows. Just like
Oh
with the
yeah.
aging population, like if you can get something without stairs, you should outperform the market in the future. So accessibility, affordability is a big one. People are older adults are on fixed income. They typically will have savings, and I'm going to be catering my business towards the like my parents and family kind of thing, lower to economically middle class in there. So people have savings that they end up going into to pay private market rent for these nursing homes because they don't qualify for the subsidies, the government run places. So that's two. We want communities because social isolation is a big one for older adults, and maybe for a lot of people are lonely, but especially the isolation that can happen when you're 82 years old and you live alone and you have accessibility issues and you're home a lot. So providing those autonomous spaces like the private room plus just places to come out and mix in community and be involved. So those are the the sort of the top reasons why people move out of their and meals. That would be the fourth thing. So if we can cover those four things, that'll be sort of the basis of where we start from. And I'll tack on love on top of that. That if we can sort of from the top of this business down, it's just love is sort of like the thing we're out to share with this project, because in British Columbia here in Canada, the largest owner of nursing homes is actually the Chinese government. There's an ad in the paper last year. There was 16 of them, which were owned by a Chinese businessman who got arrested in China for some kind of white collar crime, embezzlement or something. So the Chinese government took over all of his businesses, including this group of nursing homes in the States. So I won't get too much into the current situation of private nursing homes, but I assert that there's probably not a whole lot of love trickling down from the top of that company. Luckily, that in older adult care homes and whatnot, the type of people drawn to working there are more caring, loving people typically. So that's sort of the heaven sent of the situation. But I think we can do better, and there's lots of room for innovation in in the nursing home type business. So yeah.
No, I love that. And then what age or a couple things, will you guys provide any, and again, this is where they can save on costs too. Would you provide some nursing, like maybe a nurse coming in to visit at all, where they can share that cost? Will you do any nursing at all, providing any nursing?
Yeah, so we'll partner with community organizations that are already there, like Home Care here in Canada, that does a really good job of our government and healthcare system is very interested in keeping people living independently because we're out of beds, we're in a housing crisis. So this autonomous room in suite in my building will be their independent home, and we'll welcome their community supports to come in and to serve them there, and we'll put the space in there for that, like rooms for nursing, and we're going to have accessible bathrooms. We're not making every room, every suite's bathroom accessible shower, but we'll have one in the building with the bathtub that if someone was in a wheelchair, they can come and use this one. So people won't have to move out of a home-free location just because of the fact that their legs don't work anymore. They're not going to have to separate from their partner and go somewhere else. So we'll make the properties accessible, and there'll be a room for a nurse who can come in and meet with people out of there. And we're looking at actually just renting that space to a home care nurse, which is a private little business that someone runs. And by that person being in our building, we as Homefree aren't going to get into providing healthcare, but we can provide the space for someone to be in there and sell a 15-minute increment of time to someone who lives down the hall. That's a benefit to everybody, rather than having to call that home care person and have them drive there and charge you a whole hour. So yes, we will have people have access to some nursing, but I'm not sophisticated in the nursing home business. I don't know how to run a healthcare type thing, and I got to keep this simple sort of thing so there's a lot that seniors and older adults have a lot of needs and supports that they absolutely will need. I mean, they're going to be moving into this place because they need support. So I'll have to figure out ways to provide that to them, which I've sort of jumped off the cliff. I'm building my growing my wings as I fall sort of thing here in some ways. But
hey, we all do that. Nothing wrong with that. I love it. And then David, what age demographic are you going for?
Yeah, so I think my customer tenant avatar right now is a 82-year-old widowed woman who is experiencing one of those four challenges in her home life right now, and so that's really who's calling is someone in their early mid 80s. I'm getting a in the town that I'm in now. I'm getting about half couples actually who are calling. But when you
Nice.
go into a lot of retirement homes to visit, your grandma or your parents, you'll see a lot of single ladies that are there. So that'll be nice. Actually, I'm looking forward to getting through this renovation and initial funding aspects and getting to the part where I can just walk around and be friends with all my little new buddies in there and really be
No,
hands on with getting this first one up and running. Yeah,
no,
it'll be fun. Yeah,
no, it will be fine. I'm like flashing back to I was like 20 years old, and I actually managed a 55 and older community. It was 172 units, and I lived on site. So
yeah,
imagine a 20-year-old living alongside of these, 55. So 55 to 65. So like a younger, range, but I was friends with all of them. It was really cool. So let's talk about the timeline. So from when you decided did you buy the property? Did you already pull investors in, or did you already have the property?
no, I actually set the intention for the project first and created some accountability around it. So there was a period after I sort of had my entered into my midlife crisis and sort of was just like these things that I'm working on. I sort of reached my ceiling with those. I need to do something else. And there was a period of time where I was sort of searching, what am I going to do next? I know I need to do something meaningful. I also need to make money. And it was at the tail end of sort of deciding what to do is I told a couple people I'm going to do 40 rentals for seniors by 2020. And I started with that sort of commitment, and I created the brand and built the website, and I started looking around for property. And where my search started was residential properties, duplexes to fourplexes. And I thought, this really doesn't check all the boxes. Number one, it's not accessible. I'm going to have to do up down suites. Plus, people are going to be lonely, so I'm going to have to get some kind of bus to pick them up and bring them to a central location for lunch. And then I was like, dawned on me this opportunity for a commercial project. I'm like, duh, commercial. Like, I always sort of wanted to go into commercial and get into that anyway. So, and it's an entirely different world than
Mhm.
residential. I'm finding, gosh, like. So yeah, it started with the sort of the intention and the commitment, telling a few people, I am going to do this, and then magically, because that's how things happen sometimes. Starts with just say you're going to do it and commit to it, take steps towards it, and then boom, this property that was, it's 35 suites, it's 40 people, 45 people when you get some couples in there. I just felt like I had to dive in when the property opportunity came, and with a little bit of my experience and how to fund residential real estate investments in the past, and managed to get some vendor take back financing, which people who don't know, that means I got the current owner of this building to carry the mortgage for a period of time, and raised a bit more capital through some private funds, and I'm currently looking at getting some traditional bank financing, which is a whole nother thing. But
I love it. There you go. You set the intention, and now it's just happening, right?
well, that's where it starts, right? I guess.
Nope. It's
Got to
very,
start.
very true. It's
Yeah.
very true. So when
Mm-hmm.
did you sign the lease? Like, when did you take the building and start retrofitting it?
I bought the building. It's been this December of. It's been 1 year since I've owned the property, and then I sort of just sat on it and tried to figure out what exactly was going to be, how I was going to approach. It's a big building. It's a building that sat vacant. It's basically a abandoned hospital that was built and run by the government, the provincial government, and they closed it down. They closed a bunch of these buildings down, and this one just sat there in this beautiful little town in a nice residential neighborhood. Uh, there's a lot of fear around the building, and no one wanted to take it on, or no one had the capacity or capability or whatever. But so I dove into this thing, and took me a while to figure out a design and how to approach it, and figure out like the hazardous materials, like what are my environmental studies, that kind of thing. Then I got out here and actually just came out myself, worked my life out. Being that I only have 4 boxes of stuff now, that's the other thing with
Yeah.
minimalism. You're free, right?
Yep.
So, I came out here and set myself up a little corner of the building. Really changed my life, gosh. And it was a pretty bleak start with this building. Just I wanted to be on site and hire local trades, and yeah, it's come a long way. We've got the building now about 30% renovated, and put up some signs on the front of the building. You know, we're going to be open, and got about 40 people on that waiting list now who are interested to see the suites once we're ready. So yeah, it's come a long way. And so to answer your question, we've been in the renovation for about 6 months now.
6 months. And then where's your target open date set for?
This spring.
Whoa, right around the corner.
Yeah, we'll get one wing of the building open, and yeah.
No, you have a waiting list. You have already like an interest list. So you have a really good start.
Yeah,
You said to me 40 units total?
I've got 35 units, and yeah. So
Cool. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. Yes, we'll definitely, then after you open, we'll definitely do a follow-up interview, because then you'll get to speak on just, all this stuff, because you're going to put so much in place, I'm sure, of, events and just building the community. And yeah, so that'll be fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, we'll do our next interview from site there, and you can meet some of my new little friends maybe.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so you're not in the building. Are you in your office? You're in a different building right now?
Yeah, our internet connection in the building, I've got kind of a survival internet connection there, but it wouldn't have been sufficient for this generous meeting that you approached me with. So I'm at the local college nearby, just having our meeting. And yeah.
Perfect. Hey, that works. We always appreciate a good video connection from around the world.
Yeah.
Some of these, sometimes they're like in a jungle, or they're here, or they're in a mountain. And I'm amazed that the internet connection and the video still streams. So you got to love technology these days, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Awesome. So cool. So my next question is, I love this because we kind of dived into the market and just your avatar, the age that you guys, and you've got it so dialed in, and that was impressive, because some people don't even know what an avatar is. Like, who is your ideal client? So I love that you have this exact picture. So with co-living, where do you see, David, because it seems like you've been following it without even knowing what it was called back in the day. Like, if you were to future project, where do you see co-living going in the future, whether that's with the aging population or just in general?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll just speak more towards the aging population. So I see that that's already sort of happening in people are just moving into doing house sharing with older adults. So just people are just becoming roommates to address those concerns that people have as they age, the loneliness, the accessibility, the affordability, the meals. And so that's great. I'm sure that will continue, but that's not I think that we're going to also need some companies doing this who provide the structure and the space. Just I think there will be room for both kind of thing. But as the private sector, nursing homes are maybe they only exist right now because the people who live there lived through the 1930s, and they just don't complain about much now. But the sort of the new wave of aging population that's coming in aren't going to tolerate with like moving out of their house and into like a company where they don't have a lot of freedom, and it's just it's ripe for innovation, as I said. So I don't think we can really, what I'm doing, or what probably many people are thinking about doing with co-living for older adults, is we probably don't even really know what it's going to look like in the future. But I know that it's, people who've lived their whole life and done the right thing and paid their taxes and raised their family, and now they're 85 years old. They don't want to move into like a bunch of rules, and this is bedtime, and this is what you eat tonight. They still want to have freedom and dignity, and if you're one of the more affluent I'll speak to Canada. If you're one of the more affluent older adults in Canada, it'd be just fine. You can live in like an all-inclusive type, really nice place. But if you sell your house because you need supports and you only have $200,000, that can get eaten up pretty quick in the private market. And then the social side, the government run stuff is our Canadian government. We just had on November 25th, we had our National Housing Day, which was it was 1 year into billions of dollars of funding that was put towards national, like our housing for the vulnerable and aging population. And our government said on November 21st that this isn't a quote, but they just said, we're not going to be able to do it. The government can't and maybe shouldn't be the one who's housing people, but they've said that our funding is going to run out. The economic realities of our country is going to trump the need for housing. So the government can't do it. The private sector, I mean, it's not really their fault. They're playing within, the banking cartel really limits who gets loans. And I mean, that's what I'm finding. If you say anything about social good or anything, you're not getting a loan. So, and it's very expensive to build, and it's getting more expensive. So we need solutions for our aging population that lie outside what we can see right now. So that's kind of what I feel like I'm working on, is something that maybe doesn't exist. And I'm not special, and I'm not terribly sophisticated or anything like that, but just with the vantage point of my particular background that I have, I see this gap. And we need to create places for people with the intention of love behind it, and that can give people the supports that they need, because we have a very serious issue with how we're going to house our aging population. Our parents and grandparents, that's who I'm talking about. And think about it, for people who, like, where are your parents going to live? Where are your grandparents going to live? If you haven't sort of started researching that. I'm glad that I get to share this story with all of you guys, people who are interested in co-living, and let's share ideas and see what kind of a modest impact that we can have in this area for people.
Hey, it could be more than modest. I don't do anything modestly. we could change the world if we put the right people together, right? I love it, David. Well, that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for being on here. I really, really appreciate it. You're doing amazing work. And however we can support you, let us know. And yeah, so thanks again for doing this interview. And we'll definitely do a follow-up once you're open and operating, and we can hear the fun stories.
Sounds good. Thank you, Christine, for having me on, and the fantastic work. I acknowledge the fantastic work you're doing with the Co-Living Code, and you're also operating your own co-living housing, it sounds like. So wonderful, and wishing you the best in learning more about your technology platform, and hopefully we can use that in our Homefree locations to come. So
most definitely. Okay, David, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
all right, take care.
Okay, bye.